So it's the NATO impulse. NATO side has declared a general impulse. Now let's talk about the impulse sequence. In each impulse, a player may activate some units, move and attack with them, then activate others, move and attack with those, and so on until he has activated all units permitted in the impulse. Attack refers to either ground combat, bombardment, or jamming. See it played. This is Drive on Frankfurt, Counterattack Magazine Game number 1. In each impulse, every activated unit may move and attack as follows. So first we have artillery unit. Wait, is this in order? Artillery units may... I don't think this is. Okay, it's just broken out. Artillery units may bombard, and EW units may attempt jamming, either before or after they move. Okay, so this would be a time to use this ground impulse to use an EW unit. Okay, I'll look for that opportunity. Combat units may move, attack, and then immediately advance or retreat after combat. A combat unit which is attacked may not use normal movement for the rest of the impulse and may not attack again, but it may advance or retreat after combat. And then helicopter units may fly before and or after their base has moved if a helicopter base is activated. After flying, a helicopter may support ground combat or bombard, then fly back to its base. Okay, important. A player may attack at any time during the impulse. A player may activate any number of units. Within the restrictions, you have the type of impulse, simultaneously, and move them all before making any attacks. Thus, a player may move one unit, then others, then attack with the first unit or with all the units in combination. After each combat units which moved prior to the attack may not move for the remainder of the impulse, okay, except by advance or retreat after combat. Thus, a player could not move a combat unit one attack and then continue moving that same unit. Okay, all right, so let's see how this works in practice. So again, I'm going to activate. I'm not sure if I have to do I have to activate everybody ahead of time? I don't know. I don't really see why I should, but this is again a general impulse, so I'm going to be able to use up to 3 ground units. So here's my first ground unit. I'm going to use it. So back to our West German unit here, mechanized infantry. So the number, the 5 on the far right, as per, I think, Wargaming convention. Yes, that is the movement allowance. So he's starting in the woods here, but on a road. He has 5 movement point allowance. And so what I'm going to move him, but I want to get him, let's say, I want to get him to this hex right here. So these are roads, these are autobahns. So it should be an easy move up there. But let's see how that's done. Okay, there doesn't seem to be anything unusual about this whatsoever. So I'm going to start moving. They're going to follow the highway. These are highways and autobahns. So it's 1/2 along the highway. So 1/2, 1. Then they're going to pick up the autobahn, which is 1/3. So it's 1 1/3, 1 2/3, 2. This, so bizarre color scheme aside, this is urban. This is what they call suburban/town, and that is actually rough. So rough, suburban/town, and urban. Okay, so, but they're going to travel along the autobahn through the suburban/town. I think that was 2, and then 2 1/3. Yeah, 2 1/3. Yep, 2 1/3 on the autobahn up to that crossroads there, that junction on the autobahn, and then at this point, I do think I flipped it over. It is done activating. So back to the general impulse. Again, any number of helicopters may fly. So let's try flying a helicopter. Interestingly, very interestingly, in my opinion, these units are called helicopter bases. They're the NATO symbol given as brigade size. This is called a helicopter base. That is an actual helicopter unit. And so let's see how all of this works. So helicopter and air mobile movement. So helicopter and base units. A base unit is a ground unit. Each helicopter must remain stacked with its base at all times except when flying, and they may not change bases. So I guess the helicopter unit was supposed to be set up with it. I guess. I'll see here. Helicopters are eliminated if their base is eliminated. See, these helicopters don't have any unit identification on them. They're blank on the back. There's a U.S. helicopter. No unit identification. So, let's see. Helicopters are eliminated if their bases are eliminated. When a base moves, it's helicopter. So, yeah, see, the base has the same movement allowance as other ground units. All right, the Soviet, then there's Soviet base. We won't worry about that until we get to the next Soviet impulse. U.S. bases are higher echelon units and are activated by the same rules as other non-headquarters higher echelon units. 3 U.S. helicopters are placed with each U.S. base. So back down by Frankfurt there, here is actually there are 2 helicopter bases there. I wonder if they're even supposed to be stacked together. And then am I supposed to, I guess, set up 3 helicopter units per U.S. base there? So the first thing to note is that these units on the top left in very small print, they have their setup hex, and these 2 U.S. helicopter bases do have the same setup hex ID. And I'll see something else. So yeah, it does look like they set up in those specific setup hexes. So I added 3 helicopter units to each of the 2 helicopter bases there. So now we'll go back and fly this West German unit. So helicopter flight. Helicopters fly for 2 purposes: to bombard or support ground combat. Each helicopter unit may fly once per turn in the barrage phase or during impulses. So again, I'm doing everything I can to fly this West German unit. So this is an impulse. Yes, it is. So I still think I can fly this unit. So what happens? Helicopter flight restrictions. A helicopter may never bombard and support combat. Not trying to do that. Well, actually, I am trying to bombard. I think I'm going to try to bombard. So a helicopter may not fly if its base is area jammed or disrupted. That's interesting. Okay. If a formation is formation jammed during its formation impulse, roll the die. Okay, that doesn't apply now. Helicopter movement. So how do I move these West German attack helicopters? A flying helicopter is moved to another hex, supports ground combat or bombards, and then is immediately moved back to its base. A helicopter must always return to the base from which it started. The return path may be different from the outbound path. During the flight to the target and the flight back to base, a helicopter is subject to enemy air defense fire. So that, of course, is what I was looking for. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to send that West German attack helicopter unit straight out there to hit the nose of that Soviet advancing column there. And of course, how does it survive or try to survive air defense fire? Okay, radius of action is the lower right number there, 12 in the West German case, and that's actually exactly, so it's going to bombard, so it has its full radius of action, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Just enough, so it's following its path, or up to its radius of action of 12 to attack that Soviet unit there. Okay, air defense fire. Pretty simple, actually. Every time it enters adjacent to an enemy unit, it takes 1 defensive fire, air defensive fire attack. And when it moves into a hex with an enemy, it takes 2 fires, but this is all cumulative. So what's going to happen is when it enters that hex, it's going to take defensive fire from this unit once, and then if it survives, it's going to move on to here, and at this point it's going to take 2 from this hex, 1 from this hex, and 1 from this hex. It is not cumulative for every unit in the hex, but it's adjacent to an enemy unit, enemy force here and a force here, so it's again 2 for the same hex plus 1 for adjacent plus another 1 for adjacent, for a total of 4 air defense fire attacks. So there is an air defense fire table. Yoo-hoo, our first combat, use of a first combat table. Drive on Frankfurt. Yep. Okay, die roll. This game uses 10-sided die. 0 is a 0. Die roll there, 0 through 9. I guess this is who's doing the fire, so the Soviets are going to abort the unit on an 8, kill on a 9. Okay, yeah. And then die roll modifier plus 4 for air mobile. Unit landing doesn't apply here. And then here's again the summary. 1 air defense fire when flying through a hex adjacent to an enemy occupied hex. 2 for the same hex. And then roll separately for each hex against each unit. So we'll see how he survives, or how he does. Those West German units got all the way in, and on the last roll, Soviets got a 9. So I guess it's destroyed. So what happened? Well, it's destroyed. Let's see what happens to the base. Do these come back? We'll find out.